And welcome back. We have been joined in studio this morning by Chief Met Officer Ronald Gordon. Good morning. And you are here to discuss with us everything that we need to know about the upcoming hurricane season, the 2022 Atlantic hurricane season. Let's begin, first of all, by looking at the number of storms that we can expect, and perhaps, if you can recall, perhaps the names of some of these storms. Right? I know that there's a naming system that precedes the actual hurricane season. What also can we look forward to in terms of the activities associated with this season?
Okay, well, Islane and Marlene, it's a pleasure to be here. If you would allow me, though, I would like to start off by starting to say what are the factors that are going to be in play this season. So when it comes to seasonal prediction, there are two main factors that we look at. One is whether we are having an El Nino or La Nina this season, because as most residents or folks would know, when you have an El Nino, it typically suppresses tropical storm activity on our side of in our basin, no? And when you have cooler than normal sea surface temperatures, also in the Atlantic, it suppresses tropical cyclone activity. For this particular season, we are looking at both conditions being favorable for above normal. That is, either there's going to be neutral or La Nina conditions, which enhances tropical cyclone activity in our area. And also the Atlantic waters, the Caribbean waters are going to be warmer than normal. So that's the fuel that will certainly assist in there being an enhanced activity this year. So with that, having said that, most of the prediction centers are going for an above normal season. To put that in perspective, normal now is for there to be 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. However, for this year, the NOAA, for example, which is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, is forecasting 14 to 21 named storms, and of those 6 to 10 to become hurricanes and 3 to 6 major hurricanes.
So, yeah, I want to talk about how the predictions are made, but we were talking before we went on air. I was telling you that the new normal would be above average because we seem to be getting this prediction yearly. But in fact, the normal range was recently increased.
Certainly. When it comes to normals, we use a 30-year average as our baseline, right?
Yeah.
So every decade that changes. So previously, we were looking at 1981 to 2010 as our baseline period. Then last year, since we moved beyond 2020, now our average is from 1991 to 2020. And the previous normal for the previous 30 years was for there to be 12 named storms. That has increased to 14, right? And then in terms of hurricanes, I believe it was 6, and now that has increased to 7. So the new normal is higher than what it was previously.
And this season is still above the new normal.
That is right.
Now, how do they come up with the predictions? How do you know how many storms are going to form?
Well, like I said, it's mostly a statistical prediction. You are looking at the conditions, whether they are suitable for development. I mentioned a few of them already. Whether there's going to be La Nina, El Nino, whether you're going to have vertical wind shear, which typically tear apart tropical development or tropical systems. Whether you're going to have warmer than normal ocean temperatures in our area. And certainly whether there's enough moisture in the atmosphere. So all those conditions have to be just right for there to be an above normal season.
Yeah. Now, there are also patterns that we know about areas where hurricanes would tend to form during the season itself. We always talk about the final part of the hurricane season becoming a high-risk time for us. Is that still the same? Are we seeing those patterns holding true as well?
Yes, those patterns for the most part remain the same. The early part of the season is also an active part for the Western Caribbean Sea. So early June would be an active part for us. And then at the end of the season as well, going into your September, October, and those periods.
Let's look at, well, I've asked earlier in terms of the naming system, how the names of storms are derived. I had a conversation recently, I guess this is in the context of Agatha that's out there. And someone was saying the name sounds familiar. Talk to us about how the names are formed and given.
Okay, well, since you mentioned Agatha, I must mention that is a system in the Eastern Pacific, and they have their own set of names.
Yeah.
And then we have a different set of names for the Atlantic Basin. So what we have a hurricane committee which each country is a part of, Belize as well. So I represent Belize on that committee. And what we do is every year we would go over the list. And if there's a system that has been severe or has done significant damage or caused a lot of fatalities, the country that has been affected the most would request that that name be retired. Okay. So there's a list of names already prepared, and it's rotated every 6 years. So we already have names for 6 years into the future at this point. And like I said, each year we go and revise that list, and if there's a storm that has caused significant damage, it will be retired from the list. So if folks are paying attention, they will see an Earl on the list again, and there's a Richard as well this year. And those two storms made landfall in Belize, but because of the fact that it wasn't, there was not a lot of fatalities, thankfully, and also because the damage was not estimated to be as, I mean, for us it would be a lot of damage, but then you have to put it in context, no? There are systems that make landfall, major hurricanes that make landfall in certain countries where the damage is tremendous, no?
So, for example, in 2019, a hurricane devastated the Bahamas, right? I'm trying to remember the name of it. Dorian. There we go. Right. So that name has been stricken from the list?
That's right. That has been retired.
Like Hattie, like Mitch.
Definitely. You're not going to see a Hattie or a Mitch or a Keith again because those names have been retired. And Keith was retired because of Belize. And the significant damage it's caused to us, no?
Yeah.
So we haven't heard of a Mitch, though.
What?
We haven't heard of the return of a Mitch, or has that been retired too? Or?
That has been retired. Mitch will not return again.
Yeah. That had caused substantial damage, not
elsewhere,
just to,
right?
all around us.
And a lot of fatalities as well. So,
But it's when we look at the number of storms, that's one thing that we should pay attention to. But Ronald, I think we've learned, or we should have learned by this time, that it's not just the hurricanes we need to worry about. We have had severe damage from flooding for depressions with the flash floods we've seen in the south. We've seen outer bands just last year, Eta and Iota, that caused severe flooding in our area as well. How do you put into perspective that the hurricane season comes with risks beyond the landfall of a storm?
Definitely. I am glad you mentioned that point, Marlene, because it's something that we keep emphasizing or repeating to the public, that it doesn't take a major hurricane for there to be catastrophic damage and major flooding. So it's certainly important that persons pay keen attention to any system that is coming our way, whether it's a tropical wave or a tropical depression, because sometimes a tropical disturbance or a tropical wave can be very active and dump a tremendous amount of rainfall, which leads to significant flooding and can cause significant damage and even fatalities if persons are not prepared. So certainly what we do at the Met Service is that we, of course, are monitoring continuously. For any weather system, we look at the rainfall projections, and if those rainfalls are forecasted to be above a certain threshold, we certainly advise the public for the potential for flooding, the importance of being prepared for that system.
Yeah, and the pattern of storms as well, the major hurricanes. I think it was last year we talked about it, where the storms are getting stronger faster. I mean, how much do we attribute the increase in number of expected storm? Last year, we exhausted the entire hurricane list and went into the Greek alphabet. So the number of storms we're seeing, the severity of the storms we're seeing, and how rapidly they are gaining strength. How much of that is attributed to climate change, and how do we use that as predictions for today?
Okay, certainly, well, just to put a little bit in context, we had 2 years where the list was exhausted, right? There's 2020 where we went into the Greek alphabet, and last year we exhausted the list, but fortunately we did not go into the Greek alphabet. But that is 2 consecutive years that you have reached 21 named storms, and that is the first time that has occurred in history. So certainly...
so first and second time in history, back to
well,
back.
the previous 2020 was not the first time that we exhausted the list. It occurred in 2005, sorry.
Okay.
Where we had exhausted the list and we went into the Greek alphabet. But I'm saying back to back consecutively, it's the first time, 2020 and 2021. So certainly it has been very super active. But in terms of putting it into context, I think you mentioned climate change.
Yes.
There have been several studies investigating whether the effects of global warming, the effect of the ocean warming up will have a significant impact on the total number of storms. And most of those studies have shown that there is, or up to now, they haven't found a direct correlation to link the warming with the total number of storms for the season. However, very importantly, those same studies have shown that storms that do develop, though, have the potential to become major hurricanes because of the warming. As I mentioned, tropical systems derive their energy from warm ocean waters. So if you have more fuel going into a system, you expect it to be more stronger. So certainly those, especially those hurricanes that intensify, let's say from a tropical storm to a major hurricane in a few hours, those are quietly likely linked to the effects of climate change and global warming.
Yeah, yeah. And the development of a major storm, it's happening, as you said, over a matter of hours and even reaching sometimes the maximum threshold that was once established. We had quite a few in the past few years.
That's
Can
right.
you tell us about that?
Well, Eta and Iota I could probably bring up right away. Those went from, I think, if not tropical storm, maybe a category 1 to major hurricane in a very short time.
Yeah.
Of course, we can go as far back as the year 2000, where Keith blew up in front of us from a tropical storm to a major hurricane in a very, very short time. So certainly those are some memorable names that I can bring up in terms of what has occurred now. And for some unfortunate reason, it typically occurs right on our doorstep, which is the Northwestern Caribbean Sea. And that is quite likely linked to the very warm waters that we have in front of us.
It also seems like they stall very often too. These major storms have been strong, but they also, Dorian's a great example. That sat on the Bahamas, I know for over a day. I don't remember exactly how long.
Yes, well, it all depends on the steering currents, no? Whenever these systems are caught up in what we call weak steering currents, steering is basically what is moving the hurricane.
Yeah.
And if the currents become very weak, the system will stall. It doesn't know where to go. And that is what occurs. And of course, then it can intensify more
I was
because
just about to ask.
if it is sitting over a very warm pool of water and it's staying there for a long time, you'll expect it to become even stronger.
Ronald, if you were to compare working or looking at predictions for storms 10 years ago to now, what's the difference? Is there predictability? Is it less predictable?
Certainly, from my experience, and I have been at the Met Office since 1998, I can say that in the past, we had a lot of difficulty or challenge in predicting the projection or where the storm will go. And that has improved significantly. In fact, it is documented that the errors has decreased significantly. So when I tell you that a storm will make landfall, let's say in near Cancun, there is a high probability that that system is going to go in that direction, maybe give or plus 50 miles.
Yeah.
In the past, you'd have looked at maybe a 150-mile SWAT, 150 miles, sorry, SWAT, where it can either go north or south of that location. So predicting the path of the system, where it is going, has become much better over the years. However, it's important to know the intensification part of it has not really improved that much. So sometimes you are seeing a system coming along and it seems to be, maybe it's going to be a little tropical storm or something. The models might be indicating that, but again, I mentioned that sometimes you have them just blow up in front of us into a major hurricane. So intensification prediction has stalled, whereby predicting the path has improved significantly.
So you would say that in terms of the direction or the path that the system takes, technology has advanced to the point where there's a high degree of accuracy where that is concerned. But in terms of being able to measure beforehand, perhaps, how strong or how intense the storm would be, you still haven't really made much headways there.
Exactly, certainly.
And
that is true.
This progress that you talk about in the predictability for landfall, it has to do with the technology that we use. We always talk about the Doppler radar. It was down for a bit, but it's been fixed for over a year. Talk to us about how that helps us in our own warning system.
Certainly. Just to step back a bit in terms of what has really factored into the improvement in prediction, there are a lot of observations that we have out there now, and we have improved the forecast models. So those also are factors that have assisted us in terms of being able to predict the path of the systems. Now, in terms of the local Doppler radar, certainly that's a major, it's an instrument that is tremendously important to us. And it is important, especially when it comes to the system making landfall, or when the system is about to make landfall. As you would probably know, the radar doesn't have a huge coverage. I mean, it goes out to about 400 kilometers from our shores. But the closer you are to the center of where the Doppler radar is, which is at the airport, then the information is more accurate. So the Doppler radar certainly assists us when the system is just about to make landfall in pinpointing where exactly that center is and where it's going to make that landfall. So it gives us about, let's say, a 6 to 12 hour headway in terms of telling us, hey, this is where the eye is, this is where it's moving, and San Pedro, Belize or wherever, be on the aware that the system is coming very near to you.
Is 12 hours enough time to be able to assist in saving, in preparing people?
I would not say so. So definitely there's...
Because you can't evacuate San Pedro if the storm is 12 hours away.
Exactly. And that is the reason why the Doppler radar is not the only tool that we use. Okay. So that tool is very important, like I said, to pinpoint the center. It also, the National Hurricane Center also uses it. Whenever they can see your radar, they will say, well, Belize radar is showing the storm at this location. However, it's certainly important that people be prepared long before that 12-hour period. So that is why we have the global models, we have satellite imagery, we have that type of thing that assists us in terms of identifying the system when it's way out there beyond our shores.
I'd like to segue into another area of this conversation to discuss the coordination between the Met Service, perhaps the hydrology unit, NEMO, and all of these other agencies in the time of a storm. I know that you guys have to join efforts to be able to communicate clearly to each other, to organize the movement of people and what have you. Talk to us a bit about that.
Certainly, we have a very good working relationship, I would say, with those organizations. NEMO certainly is, well, first of all, we're in the same ministry, so that has assisted us in terms of being able to coordinate better. We are always updating the NEMO coordinator and NEMO on any system that is posing a threat to Belize long before it gets here. So we are in constant communication. Once the system is about to, or the system has shown the potential to come here, we will be updating them more often. There's, or we send out an advisory that goes to NEMO. We, of course, include the scientific part of it, and NEMO will include the disaster preparedness part of that advisory. So there is strong coordination there.
Yeah. Now, coming back to the predictions for landfall, it's a double-edged sword having so much information, because often when we see projected paths, you have your cone, but very often you have just the center point of what you expect to be the projected path, and that shifts within the cone. Over the years, we've seen where people take it literally and don't heed the warning. What's your advice to people as to how to read these predictions and to gauge their own, make their own risk assessments? Yes.
First of all, I would like to say that persons should, of course, pay attention to official information, right?
Yeah.
Don't be misguided or don't become embroiled in rumors and so on. But certainly, when it comes to the prediction cone, it is a cone of uncertainty. So that center line, we advise persons not to focus on the center line.
Yeah.
The idea of the cone is to tell you that the center of that system, that hurricane, or would it be a tropical storm, could be anywhere within that warning cone whenever it makes landfall on you. So if you see a cone extending from southern Belize to, let's say, the border, then it's telling you that the eye of that storm can make landfall either in southern Belize or at the northern border. It does not tell you to focus on the center. Another misconception, of course, is that the cone, of course, will open up in time because of the fact that the predictability decreases with time. There's more uncertainty. So, of course, the cone is going to widen. But a misconception that residents or the public takes, and it's not only in Belize, but it's across the world, they will see that cone becoming wider and they think the hurricane is becoming bigger. But that is not the case. The cone is certainly just telling you the unpredictability, the level of uncertainty that's there with that system.
Yeah, so when we see something like this, for example, you see how wide it is. We try to assume where it's going to make landfall, at least the center of it. But it's a storm, and the bands itself can reach far out.
Certainly, and I think this image is, if I am correct, is showing the probability of either storm force winds. Yeah. So it's a probability cone that you're looking at there. And certainly, like I said, anywhere within that area, wherever it is showing green or oranges, it is telling you that tropical storm force or hurricane force winds can occur. So it's a probability. Yeah.
And so we still have to be prepared nonetheless.
Yes, certainly.
Sometimes they make swings right before landfall too. That was the case with Oh, I can't remember the name of the storm. The one that caused the storm surge in Ladyville.
Earl.
Thank you. That was, I know, at the very last minute, it made landfall there, but it wasn't the area that made landfall that we saw the concerns with flooding. Again, it takes us back to listening to the advice that's given to us by NEMO, by the entire team there at the Met Service about being prepared. Where are the areas of concern when a storm is making landfall? Because in that case, I believe Ladyville was just north of the area of landfall.
Yes. And you mentioned the little swings that occur probably just before landfall, and it's important. That is the reason why when we issue a warning or alert, we don't focus on an exact area, because there's always a little bit of unpredictability that can occur, and a slight deviation can cause a significant difference. And we saw that with Earl. The system was forecasted to make landfall, I think, a little bit north of Ladyville, over, let's say, the Biscayne area, a bit to the north. And at the end, it made a little bit of southwest jog. So it came in just south of Ladyville, I think over Belize, more or less. And of course, north of the center, you asked me where are the most hazards. It would be north of where the system makes landfall. So you have both the storm surge that will affect you in that area, because of the fact that you have the wind coming from offshore to the land. So it's bringing in the water with it. And of course, the more severe winds are also on the north. So those are the major areas for concern. But of course, with a system that is producing a lot of rainfall, you cannot focus on you cannot focus on one particular area. Rainfall can occur far from the center, and flooding can occur also far from the center.
Yeah, that was one of those situations where I think people realized they didn't get the brunt of the storm, but that storm surge came in quickly and scared a lot of people.
Indeed.
Just quickly though, when we talk major storms, we're talking higher than a Category 3, right?
Yes, a major hurricane is defined as one that is higher than Category 3, which is, I think, about 115 miles per hour, if my memory is correct.
Well, but looking at Belize and or major coastal areas, many of them are very vulnerable to even Category 2 and in some cases Category 1 storms. Can you explain that for us?
Yes, we are a very low-lying coastline area, so certainly it doesn't take a major hurricane to have to create significant damage. So certainly we have to be prepared for any system, and as I mentioned before, even a tropical depression with a lot of rainfall can have significant flooding effect on our coastlines. Not that are very, like we said, we are some part of the coastline is at sea level or below. So it doesn't take a major hurricane. We have to be prepared nonetheless.
Yeah. And the factors for flooding, like what we saw with Eta and Iota?
Flooding can occur, I think, in Belize anywhere, but certainly, certainly we advise residents, if you're living near rivers, if you're having tremendous amount of rainfall, that certainly can lead to flash flooding. So persons along the rivers, persons in mountainous areas can be at the risk for landslides as well. And of course, then you have the flooding that comes, we call riverine flooding, or we call it, there's another name, it slips my mind right now, but those floods that come along with the river flooding and swelling and coming in from the inland areas to the coast. Certainly we saw that with Eta and Iota, whereby the rains had stopped, but the rivers were still flooded, so you had rain, flooding occurring in areas like Ladyville, I think in Belama, in Belize City. So I think on a whole, we need to be prepared for whatever type of flooding could occur.
Yeah. All right. And I know that you also, just as we wrap up, because we're going to move into a conversation now about disaster planning, you also at the Met Service help out in times when there are things like tsunami warnings.
Yes, the National Met Service is the tsunami warning focal point for the country of Belize. So whenever a tsunami alert is issued by the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, those bulletins will come to us, and we would of course inform them immediately that there is a potential for a tsunami coming our way, so that they can in turn alert the public.
How many times have we issued a tsunami warning in Belize?
If my memory serves me right, I think we did transfer information to NEMO from the last potential tsunami that occurred in 2018 or 2019?
Yeah, may have been once or
yes,
twice. Yeah.
So I would say once or twice it has occurred in the past.
All right. Any closing thoughts, Ronald?
And before I close off, I would like to certainly mention the fact that even though the hurricane season has not started as yet, we are having some effects from a tropical system in the Pacific, which is Agatha. So I urge residents to be on the lookout for the possibility of, or the potential actually, for very heavy rainfall and for the possibility of flooding over the next few days across the country. So I guess it's an eye-opener for us. The hurricane season is here, and we need to be prepared.
All right.
An early one.
Thank you so much for that. And we are going to be talking about getting prepared after the break. We're going to be joined by Red Cross to talk about how you can put together those disaster preparedness kits. So please stay tuned.